Does Vladimir Putin hope to get out of this one-on-one with Macron, and indeed what's in it for Macron?
Well, it's important, I think, for Putin. You mentioned the fact that Russia has been was excluded in 2014 from the G8. In other words, he will not be representing Russia at the G7 in Biarritz. This is an opportunity, therefore, just 5 days before the G7 summit in Biarritz, for President Putin to have an input on the discussions at that summit. And President Macron recognizes, as do all the leaders at that summit, that Russia's input is absolutely crucial to virtually all the issues that they're going to be talking about. You know, whether you listed some of them there, Syria, Ukraine, Iran. It's impossible to resolve any of those issues without Russia having a say on it. It's crucial to the outcome. So, this is an opportunity for President Macron to sit down at Brégançon, a sort of more intimate setting than is usually the case for these sort of visits at the Elysee, and talk with President Putin about what it is that Russia actually wants in many of these situations, particularly in Syria. What is the Russian position? What sort of pressure, if any, is Russia prepared to put on President Assad of Syria, particularly with the situation becoming so acute in Idlib province and the threat of a major attack by Syrian forces against that province in the relatively near future. So that's one of the big issues they're going to be discussing. Clearly Iran as well, because of the rising tensions and the hope that perhaps President Putin has some influence over the direction in which the Iranians are prepared to go in the near future. Whether or not he really does have that influence is another matter. But certainly if anybody can put pressure on or persuade the Iranians to move in a perhaps more sympathetic way towards the JCPOA, the nuclear agreement with Iran, not pull out of any more of the conditions, that would certainly be helpful. Another big issue clearly going to be Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky, a new president in Ukraine, that gives the possibility at least of some movement on the Ukrainian situation. Zelensky has proposed to Putin that there should be direct talks between the two. I'm sure President Macron will be saying to President Putin, look, we're prepared to help facilitate that. If you're interested in doing it, why not explore the possibilities? There's nothing to be lost. This is a moment when perhaps something can shift. So that's an area I think that they will try to move on. And also, a positive, I think, before they even get started, is it looks like Russia is going to ratify the Paris Agreement on climate change in September.
OK, so that could get them off to a positive start. But, a lot of complicated files on the table, and there is that question of human rights that's likely to crop up, is it?
Yes. I mean, there's, President Macron can't get around that. There's a lot of pressure on him to bring up the issue of human rights in Russia, particularly with the recent demonstrations in Moscow over the decision to bar independent candidates from standing in the city council elections. We've seen thousands of people arrested for taking part in peaceful demonstrations, many of them brutally beaten up by the police. He will be raising that issue of human rights with them, and quite probably President Putin will hit back and saying, look, who are you to talk? Look at the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests in Paris. We've seen the scenes on Russian television of police brutality towards them, people being shot in the eye and that sort of thing. I think President Macron will insist that there is no equivalence here. The Gilets jaunes have been allowed to demonstrate every weekend for the last several months. Nobody's preventing them from doing that. The issue is primarily one of violence. If there is violence, then the police have every right to take strong measures against those participating in the violence. Certainly there are many who will say that there is a question of proportionality here, but that, I think, will be his argument, to insist against the argument of President Putin, which he often uses, that there is an equivalence.
Okay, it'll be really interesting to see how those talks go, but thanks a lot, Rolf Parsons, for giving us a clear image of just how complex and indeed important they are.